Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever it is for you. Welcome back to another Division 2 video. My name is Prime and I'm gonna show you the updated DPS build for the Incursion that everybody is running with. Or at least this is the build that everybody wants to run with. It's pretty easy to get together. You can shred through enemies. And this is an updated build from my last build. Because we changed a few things and it's all for the better. We are in week 2 now of the new Incursion. And the builds and the tactics will only get improved. So here is the updated DPS build that in my opinion is the best one out there, and again pretty easy to farm. But without further ado, enough intro, enough gameplay, let's dive right into this build and let me show you what we've updated and what you need to change. And this is the updated build that everybody should run around with, and this will definitely help you out doing some extra damage and of course helping your teammates out as well. Starting with that's why I'm running my specialization, the demo specialization. Not that it does that much for me, but it gives me and the whole group an extra 5% damage to targets out of cover, and we all know that is multiplicative damage. I'm running around with that demo specialization because somebody else in my group is running around with the firewall and the healer is running around with the survivalist, to making sure that we have all the buffs active. And that's pretty much our setup for our 3 players. And then if we carry somebody, or if we're going for a little bit faster times, if we carry somebody, we need to make sure that they are running the gunner specialization, as that gives you a little bit more survivability, but does not do that much for the group. But if you are with the 4 of you and you want to get faster times, you want to boost each other up, then go for the sharpshooter specialization, as that gives you an extra 10% headshot damage as well. And we know if you're beaming down bosses, if they're standing still, always shoot that half. So let's get over to my weapons that I use. Of course, I'm using the Elmos. If you have the Ouroboros, if you're lucky enough to get that Ouroboros, definitely use that Ouroboros, because that is just a burst damage times 100. It is a great gun in PvE and PvP. So if you have it, choose for that. But I have my Elmos. Why the Elmos? Because it's still pretty high in the RPMs. The damage is pretty high as well. We have a mag of 70, and of course, through our talent, it will give us a little bit more of survivability, as you will shock people if you hit that stack of 100. So that's why most of us are running around with that Elmos. If you don't have the Elmos, I would go for the FAMAS with Optimist on there. That will be your second go-to, or your third if you have that Ouroboros. Then let's jump over to my secondary weapon, and that will be the rock and roll. You can go for the lefty as well, but in our group synergy, in our group, the healer has the lefty, so we can do as much damage, as much DPS as possible, so the healer can make sure that he procs that sledgehammer or that perfect sledgehammer, so we deal even more damage. But I'm running around with the rock and roll just to stack up my striker and make sure that I'm always at the top and always doing more damage. Then for your handgun, it doesn't really matter what you use. If you have handguns that are not proficient yet, use that, because that will save you time in farming for it, and of course materials for donation. Then let's jump over to the rest of the build setup. We are always trying to run at least 2 Coyote masks, but preferably 3. And why the 3 Coyotes masks? Because the talent can be activated for all 3. So in a perfect world, if somebody's shooting from 0 to 15 meters, another person is shooting from 15 to 25, and another person is shooting from 25 and higher. In a perfect world, you will receive 35% critical hit chance and 35% critical hit damage. So that's why the Coyote mask is the one to go for, and then you can even maybe change a few things around on your build to do even more damage if you are absolutely sure that you hit that 35% critical hit chance and 35% critical hit damage. Most of the time we will have 35% critical hit damage and 10% critical hit chance, so you can lower your critical hit chance almost always to around 50% and boost it up into the critical hit damage to do even more damage output. Then jumping over to my knee pads, and that is Seska. Seska I chose to go for, of course, to go for that extra critical hit chance to get me up towards that 50 to 52% if I'm not mistaken. Again, everything is rolled on critical hit damage, and if it's a normal gear, then we roll critical hit chance and critical hit damage on there, and this is the only normal gear on there, so go for critical hit damage and critical hit chance, as of course our mask already comes with critical hit chance and critical hit damage, and again we went for a critical hit damage mod. Then over to the strikers, and we are using the backpack and the chest piece. Yes, normally in the game it is really hard to keep up those stacks, but now because there are a lot of enemies, there is a lot of shooting going on, you can keep up those stacks, especially if you can shoot some enemies. For example, take that second boss, the right boss, that flaming hunter. You can still shoot him. While he's immune, you can still make sure that your stacks are up on point. Same as for the lovebirds. If you run into the middle, you want to take out Johnson, but Johnson isn't there yet, you can start shooting Martinez to get the stacks up, making sure that you keep your stacks at a max. So going over for the chest piece, of course, we all know strikers, we do not have to explain everything, but we're gaining an extra 100% weapon damage through our backpack instead of that 65, and because we're running around with that chest piece, we are going up to 200 stacks, so we're gaining an extra 200% weapon damage, and like I just explained, it's pretty easy to keep it up and make sure that you still start shooting people, still start aggroing people, even though they are immune, especially on right, if he is throwing down that bomb or if he's smacking down those pipes. There are no ads, he is immune, so make sure to just shoot at him and keep your stacks at a max. Then over to my backpack, like I explained, this will boost our total damage from 0.65 per stack to 1% per stack, and that's why we can gain that 200% weapon damage. Again, everything is on critical hit damage with a critical hit damage mod on there. Same for my chest piece, as you can see, critical hit damage and critical hit damage mod. Holster, critical hit damage on there, and then of course our gloves, critical hit damage on there as well. And that's pretty much it for the whole overview of the build for our skills, and everybody, almost everybody is using this throughout the whole incursion, and that's a Reviver Hive and a decoy. Why the decoy? Because this will help you out, especially the first few burst shots from your enemy will land on your decoy. You can then take him down pretty easily without worrying that they might take you down if the healer is out of heals or is a little bit away from you. And then of course a Reviver Hive to give you an extra health, as it is kind of annoying when a teammate goes down and somebody else needs to pick him or her up, because that will set you back and that will give the ads the chance to overrun you, and nobody wants that. So let's jump over to the stats real quick. We have 52% critical hit chance. So I went towards that 52% critical hit chance. You probably, if you have this exact same setup, you will probably reach the same stats. So 52% critical hit chance and 173% critical hit damage. But like I explained with that Coyote mask, if you know that 3 different people are running that Coyote mask, if you know that you can get that full crit chance up there of that 35% or at least at 25% from 25 meters and further, then go for the Gruppo knee pads. This will lower your critical hit chance to 42%, but you will gain 15% critical hit damage. So this boosts us up to 188% critical hit damage. If you, for example, have that Ouroboros, definitely go for the Gruppo knee pads, as the Ouroboros is an SMG and one of the core attributes will be critical hit chance, so you do not need that Seska. Then always go for that Gruppo. You will hit a lot harder and you will not have any problems hitting that critical hit chance cap of 60%, even with the boosts of the Coyote's Mask. And that's pretty much it. All the rest of the stats are not really useful. We don't have really some survivability or any arm regeneration or something like that. This is just straight up the build, and this is hands down the best build you can run around with within the Incursion. A lot of people will be asking about this build, and it's pretty easy to farm. You only have to go for 4 pieces of Striker. Most of the time that Coyote Mask everybody already has, and then you only have to go for the knee pads of Seska or for Gruppo. If you don't have the Coyote's Mask, I would go for a Gruppo Mask. And then if you run around with that Ouroboros, maybe go for some Sokolov knee pads if you still don't have that Coyote's Mask. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much if you're still here. You are a freaking legend if you stay to the end. Thank you very much for that support. If you like the video, like the video. And of course, if you're new here, you want to be updated about the Division universe, the Division 2, and the future Division 3, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video. PurePrime out.